So Grenoble just got rated as the world's, not just France's, but the world's most livable city. The ranking was done by an organization named Oxford Economics, and they're an organization that's affiliated with the Oxford University or University of Oxford Business College. And yep, that's the Oxford University of Oxford, England. More technically, Grenoble's #1 ranking was in the category of quality of life. The Oxford Economics Organization does 4 or 5 different rankings. These include economics, human capital, quality of life, environment, and governance. They rank the 1,000 or the largest 1,000 cities. The main factors they looked at were using their words, income equality, income per person, life expectancy, housing expenditures, and strangely, internet speed. Oh, and I almost missed maybe the one that's most important to me, not really, but recreation and cultural sites. Now, as you might expect, some of our local expat acquaintances were instantly sarcastically derisive about the study's conclusion. Other cities in the top 10 included, in order after Grenoble, Canberra, Australia, Bern, Switzerland, Bergen, Norway, Basel, Switzerland, Luxembourg, Reykjavik, Iceland, Zurich, Switzerland, Ghent, I'm not sure I'm saying that right, Ghent or Gent, Belgium, and Nantes, France. So based on the number of places in the top 10, you'd have to say probably Switzerland is the world's most livable country. Anyway, despite some of the surprise and even derision by local expat friends, we have no complaints with the study's conclusion. A lot of it really rings true for us, including some things that weren't necessarily in the study, although I didn't read the entire study, I'll admit. But when you consider sort of a balance of factors that affect, I think, your sort of average family, economics, which includes both the ability to make a living and the cost of living, education, again, including both quality and cost, environment, the cleanliness of the environment, the nature of the environment, and there again, I go almost forgetting an important one, recreational and cultural opportunities. Grenoble does pretty damn well. We're coming from a city that San Diego, California, that has a lot of positives. In fact, I got kind of tired of hearing people often say that they lived in the best place in the world, or how lucky they were to live in San Diego. And in fact, San Diego has a lot of wonderful qualities, mostly tied to sort of the natural, geographical, and weather qualities. But it also has a lot of downsides. The urban development, the cost of living, and inequality. Our kids are getting a wonderful education, an education that the public education is equal to private school education in the U.S. And the private school education here typically costs 1,500 euros a year. U.S. what? $15,000 to $25,000 a year. Our only complaint about the education, really more complaint of the kids, is that the school day is too long and they assign too much homework. Really not a lot of time for recreation for the kids in school here. I'm talking about, elementary school, middle school, and high school. But when they get out of high school, when they graduate high school, they're basically at the level of an American who's just finished his sophomore year at university. Regarding economics, the city has been referred to as the Silicon Valley of France. There's a big high-tech sector here, which also accounts for the large number of expats, which creates quite an international atmosphere. There's also a large university presence, probably highest proportion, among the highest proportion of students to regular residents here of anywhere in France, at least any sizable city. One of the things that's missing from here that's present in a lot of other French cities is tourists. That's a positive deficiency. Sure, people come to the nearby French Alps, but that doesn't necessarily mean they stop by Grenoble for any length of time. Grenoble doesn't have a great cathedral. It doesn't have a Roman Colosseum. It doesn't even have architecture that you can't find in most cities in Grenoble, and in France that is. As a result, the city's not thronged with tourists, not even the most historic parts of the city. Of course, if you go to Barcelona or Paris or even Lyon and places like that, there are so many tourists that being a local or a resident puts you in the minority. And that really undermines the feeling of being in France. Since so much of the purpose of living in France is enjoying culture and the people. And in that regard, Grenoble excels. It's a very walkable city with lots of the buildings in the style that is, both the medieval type buildings as well as the 19th century buildings, and the many cafes and restaurants. And it's a very holistic city. In other words, it's like a small town on steroids. I mean, for an American, that's how I'd put it. It's got lots of schools, lots of bakeries, lots of grocery stores, lots of residents going about their daily lives. They're out on the street, on the sidewalk, on their bikes, or on their feet. France does have its share of social ills and inequality, and there are some neighborhoods that are pretty rough, in which also that there's a significant organized drug trade, I would say, where they fight over turf. The thing that does affect residents that are non-criminal residents is there's a fair amount of petty crime as well. Bicycle theft and breaking into cars by smashing the windows. However, if you do not leave things in your car and you lock your bicycle, we haven't had any bicycles stolen since we've been here. In fact, we've had a few instances where we, left something, dropped something in a public place, especially with our two kids, and had them returned. So there's a pretty honest folk here too. All in all, I'd say we feel a lot safer here walking the streets at night, for example, than we did in San Diego. And it's not like San Diego is thought of as one of the the more crime-ridden cities in the country. In regards to ways to spend your free time, I find the city to be amazing. The Alps are just phenomenal. They're close at hand. In fact, Grenoble is surrounded by 3 different mountain ranges. The Belladone, which is part of the Alps, the Chartreuse, which is what's called pre-Alp mountain range, but also pretty high, over 2,000 meters at their highest, and then the Vercors range, which again are a pre-Alps range that have are beautiful, have some ski areas. All three mountain ranges have ski areas, as well as fantastic hiking. There are an ample supply, or is an ample supply of museums here. Um, Most of them are free. They have a fantastic art museum, as well as several museums dealing with different periods of history. Lots of art galleries and little workshops and storefronts for various craftsmen. The urban core form, I guess you'd call it, is wonderful. Lots of shady trees. Most buildings are in the 6 to 7 story range. Most of them range from history between 1500s to the early 20th century. Now, when you get to the outer parts of the city, where most of the development happened after World War II, and was the primary construction material was concrete, and they started to cater to the car, and had large setbacks and so forth, and disrupted the street, sort of the street face. That part of the city is pretty ugly, to tell you the truth. In fact, it provides an amazing contrast between the failure of modern development to sort of nourish the human mind and spirit versus development, pre-World War II development. Of course, the deciding factor there being buildings made for cars versus buildings made for humans. Or I should say, prioritizing cars versus pedestrians. That's what I'm talking about. A little school group there. Lots of schools. I've never seen so many schools so close together. It's wonderful. Let's pick up their schools on bicycles. All sorts of elaborate bicycles modified to carry children. Anyway, getting back to the urban form discussion. Even the massive, ugly development that's on the outer rings of the city, even that is well served by mass transit compared to the U.S. The urban form of the typical large French city is almost the opposite of the U.S. because the buildings in the center, and the centers here are substantial, much, occupy a bigger geographical area than U.S. cities typically. But anyway, the center is predominantly, 5, 6, 7-story buildings. And then as you move out to what they call the banlieues, if I pronounce that correctly, that's where you get the high rises that, can be anywhere from 10 to 30 stories high. Anyway, one of the things that the report and the ranking was high on was the accessibility of nature from Grenoble. So you have, like I said, we're surrounded by mountains, and it's really easy to get to them. There's public bus lines that go to various places. Great hiking. Recreation tends to be far less expensive here than it is in the U.S. Perhaps the most extreme example of that is comparing skiing. We're in a typical day pass at a mid to upper range ski area in the U.S. is going to cost you over $200 per day. In France, the most expensive day pass is going to run you probably 70 or 80 euros. I haven't encountered that yet. Even at the biggest ski areas here near Grenoble, which would be like Alpe d'Huez or Les Deux Alpes. Alpe d'Huez is regularly named the most popular ski area in the Alps. That ticket runs about 50 euros a day, and then there's lots of ski areas, smaller ski areas, that are like 15 euros per day, or even less. Although we're about 3-4 hours from the closest ocean, there are a lot of lakes, a lot of sailing, fishing, windsurfing, paddleboarding, you name it. And the summers here are hot. And it's not a dry heat. It's not super humid, but it's not a dry heat either. In fact, that would be my major complaint about Grenoble would be the summer heat. I find August to be nearly unbearable. In fact, it seems like a lot of people feel that way because the city seems to be almost deserted in August. I won't say too much about healthcare because that's, something that all of France is good at. But there's a big university hospital here, so it might be a cut above here as well. So yeah, when you consider sort of the basic pillars of life on balance, I can understand how Grenoble was at the top of the rankings. I know that some people might prefer to live in a, small village in Provence, but they weren't in the competition. They're not in the top 1,000 by size cities. Some cities might be prettier. Some cities might have warmer winter. Some cities might even be cheaper. But on balance, I think that, obviously the Oxford Economics Organization came to the conclusion, I think with a lot of validity, that Grenoble rates well on quality of life overall, considering the various pillars of existence. And I think that's particularly true for people with children. In case I didn't say it already, it's very easy to get around on a bicycle here, or walking, or using public transit. Even though it's in the middle of the mountains, it has the ironic reputation of being France's flattest city. It sits on do they call those alluvial plains? I'm not sure. It's a conjunction of two rivers, and it's just a flat basin that's in a valley between mountains. So there's not a lot of pedaling uphill unless you want to head to the mountains. And there's a lot of eyes on the streets, so you feel safe. However, not the same can be said for Spikey, who's never felt safe here. He hates, he doesn't trust anyone. He hates noises, and he's in a constant state of paranoia. That's just his nature. Like I said, his tail between his legs. He doesn't like to stay still either. I'm sitting here on a park bench. Should I show it to you? There you go. Of course, that's something I think a lot of us associate France with, is park benches and people sitting on benches or at cafes drinking wine. By the way, I'll leave the link to the study, as well as, I guess, an article on the study. I don't know, we'll see about it. But I'll leave at least one link regarding the study in the description.